But before us, no one had any way of knowing where in Africa they came from. So this wasn't a line extension. This was revolutionary. And so I wanted to be a part of something revolutionary, not just a helper.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 160 of the Dreams and Drive podcast, and today we are going to be speaking with Dr. Gina Paige of African Ancestry. In 2003, Gina co-founded African Ancestry, and in doing so, she helped pioneer a new way of tracing African lineage using genetics and a new marketplace for people of African descent looking to more accurately and reliably trace their roots. And guess what? It's 100% Black owned and uses Black scientists. And in this episode, Gina talks about the origins of the company and why this work is so important. We dive into the challenges her and her co-founder, Dr. Rick Kittles, faced when first launching, dealing with criticism, and the lessons she has for other entrepreneurs seeking success. And we even do a reveal of my own African ancestry results. I was super excited to learn where I'm from, and we have a conversation about why this is so important for us to invest in and to learn more about. And if you're interested in getting your own African Ancestry DNA kit, you can use the code DREAMS for 5% off your order. The process was really easy for me when I did it, so I highly recommend it if it's something that you want to do, that you guys try it out. As always, remember that you're following us on social. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you like this episode, please share it with a friend and tag us online as well. All Dreams and Drive merchandise and gear, t-shirts, hoodies, and crew neck sweatshirts are on sale, so you can shop our sale at dreamsanddrive.com/shop. All right, so we're going to get straight into the show. I hope you guys enjoy. Hi, Gina. Welcome to this episode of Dreams and Drive. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I am. Listen, it's funny because we have to go back to how this all started. You may not know this, but I want to say it was after Black Panther came out, and I was like watching, me along with millions of other people saw that video that Chadwick Boseman did with when he mentioned African Ancestry in the Breakfast Club, and I was like, what is this, right? So I did the research. I'm like, yo, they would be really cool to maybe work with or have on the show. So that's how the whole process started of me reaching out to your team and making this episode happen.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that was a very fortuitous shout out that he gave us. We couldn't have planned it or paid for it or asked for it any other way.
And you know, it's funny. I ended up meeting him. I kid you not. Let's say I saw that on a Monday. Wednesday, I met him. It was just weird how the chain of events happened. One of my friends worked at the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show and asked me to be on a segment with Black Panther. And I don't know if you saw it, but he surprised.
I saw that you went on there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just so weird how that all worked out, because earlier in the week I was researching African Ancestry and researching him. And I had also interviewed one of the Dora Milaje on the show. So life just happens. The universe conspires to make things happen for you sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm. I sure do.
So let's get to it. I love to start interviews going back in time, Gina. If I could say, what was the 8-year-old Gina like? What was inspiring you back then as a child?
That's funny. I don't know. That's so long ago, girl. You'd have to ask my parents. But the one thing I remember about being an 8-year-old was that I loved to dance. I used to get in trouble for dancing all the time. But as it relates to business, I actually started a magazine with my cousin. We wanted to go to one of the area amusement parks that had just opened. And I think it was like $5 or something to get in. And so we created a magazine. We published a magazine that our parents had to print. They had to finance it, right? And all their friends bought it, I guess. And we made our money to go to what is now known as King's Dominion, I think Six Flags or something. So around 8, that was when I had my entrepreneurial leanings.
Did you like being an entrepreneur? Did you ever see yourself, doing that when you got older? For real?
Well, yeah, because I didn't want to work for anybody. So yes, I saw myself as an entrepreneur, but I didn't know doing what.
Okay.
I just knew that I wanted to work for myself.
So what was the dream, going into high school as a young adolescent and then on to college? Like, what was the path you were creating for yourself?
My path wasn't really a path. I just did what you're supposed to do. You go to high school, you go to college. And when I graduated from college, I hadn't gone to the career planning center. I didn't have a job, a career lined up. I was just kind of moving through organically. And it wasn't until a year or so after college when I saw the jobs that I looked at people who had jobs that I thought were interesting. Mm-hmm. And all of those people had MBAs. And so I thought, okay, well then I guess I should get an MBA. But I was more interested in advertising. When I went to business school, you were discouraged from going into advertising because it didn't pay as much as if you went onto the brand side in one of the corporations for one of the big brands. And so my advertising interest, I kind of stopped it and then went on to the business product management side.
Okay. And you ended up getting your MBA from University of Michigan, right?
I did.
Looking back at it, because I feel like a lot of our listeners now may be thinking about going to business school or maybe currently in business school and wondering if it's worth it. Did you think that was worth it for you in your career where you are now?
I think it was worth it for a few reasons. One, I got a fellowship, so I didn't have to pay for it.
That's what I keep telling myself. I need to find a way that I don't have to pay for it and I'll go back.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. But even still, I believe that certainly at the time, and I still believe this, although I've been out of business school for many years, that it prepares you in a way of thinking, which I think is important. And it was important to me to learn how business was done before I tried to do it myself. I think today a lot of people say, I want to be an entrepreneur, and they just jump right in. They don't have any experience with anything. They don't have any training. I'm not quite sure how they do that. But I chose to go to business school, expanded my network, right? So that was one important benefit. And then spent 10 years in corporate America learning how to run a business, a product line, learning how to launch new products and product line extensions, learning about advertising, learning about consumer behavior, learning about market research, learning about research and development. Those are the things that you learn at an academic level in business school, but then to get the hands-on training at someone else's expense, business school afforded me the opportunity to do that and get paid.
And I definitely feel like that is such a good lesson, because I feel like in this school with millennials, where there's this culture of like, you don't have to go to school, you can do it yourself and figure it out along the way. But I definitely feel like there's a benefit from, number one, learning on someone else's dime, right? Because when you're at a company, they can invest in you, whereas you can go to conferences. You actually have people to learn from versus when you're trying to teach yourself. That's the one thing that I'll say that I'm happy that I still, although I'm doing Dreams and Drive, I still have a 9-to-5 where I'm learning things from people who are experts at what they're doing, because it's different when you're trying to teach yourself something versus seeing how someone already made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, trial and error, there's something to be said for that, but it takes a lot longer. Mm-hmm. It takes a whole lot longer. And I think entrepreneurship is hard enough. And even when you have some semblance of what knowing what you're doing. So I'm definitely a proponent of learning on someone else's dime.
Thinking of all the marketing background, the market research, product development experience you've had, What do you think was the biggest lesson that you learned from that time in your life that has really helped apply, or you've applied to what you're doing now?
One is the importance of the consumer and making sure that whatever you're selling is something that there's a consumer need for it. A lot of times people start businesses based on what they like or what their passion is without fully understanding whether or not there's a market for that. Learning about the importance of the consumer, the consumer's wants and needs is something I got there. It was also a good place, believe it or not, it was a good place to understand what you're good at, to understand your strengths, especially as a Black person. They're not looking for you to really do a good job.
Really?
I mean, their expectation is that you perform, but corporate America isn't a nurturing environment for Black people. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
When you can thrive in the face of that kind of environment, then it shows you what you're made of and it shows you what you're capable of.
What was your strength? Like, what was the strength that you figured that you found out that you had? I realized that I was very good at ideation and I was very good at presenting ideas. So presenting plans, that was where my strength was, and coming up with, developing the presentations, making sure that they had all the elements that were required in order to sell an idea or to sell your plan. I'd say that was one of them for sure. I think that's a good segue into us talking about African ancestry. So before, earlier today, as I was doing my research for this interview, I watched the 15th anniversary live video that you did with Dr. Rick Kittles, and I was just so impressed about you guys' partnership, because you can definitely see your strength coming through in the video and his strength. And one of the things that you said that was when you met him, you helped him commercialize the dream. So you guys both needed each other. But maybe let's go back to that day and let's go back to DC, 2003 or 2002, was it, when you met Rick?
Yeah, 02.
Yeah, 02. So how did that happen? How did the idea for African ancestry as we know it today come to be?
Well, he already had the idea.
Okay.
He had tried to commercialize the idea with other people. And the people that he had tried to work with or thought that he may work with really didn't share a similar perspective on Black people, on business. And so he was kind of frustrated. I have a cousin who was also a professor at Howard at the time in the Department of Psychology. And she was collaborating with him on the psychological impact of this work and at a research level. He hadn't commercialized it yet, obviously. And so she knew that he wanted to commercialize the business. And so she introduced us. And she positioned it as, he needs some help. Would you help him? And after I read read what he had put together already, I was like, well, I'm not going to help him. We can partner.
Why not? What was your initial apprehension?
Well, no, I wasn't in it to help.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying.
We could partner. We could do it together, but I wasn't just going to lend support for him to execute it. So I wanted to be in on it, is my point.
Ooh, so let's talk about that. Why do you think that distinction and that decision to partner was so pivotal for you and for the future of what African ancestry became?
Well, I think there's some times where you give away your services and you help people, but this was such a big idea. If you think about it, what we offer has never existed before in history. Mm-hmm. It's not like when I worked at Colgate-Palmolive on Palmolive dish liquid. There's only a couple ways to wash your dishes. So, right, you can add a fragrance, you can add some antimicrobial beads or whatever, but it's still just going to be soap and water to wash your dishes. Or when I worked at Sara Lee Bakery and I managed the frozen pie categories, there's not going to be a new pie, or a new cheesecake. It might come in the form of a bite. You might mix two flavors together, but a pie is a pie. A dessert is a dessert is a dessert. But before us, no one had any way of knowing where in Africa they came from. So this wasn't a line extension. This was revolutionary. And so I wanted to be a part of something revolutionary, not just a helper.
So what were the first things that you both had to do in order to actually take this from ideation, an idea, to something that was actually a product in the market that could be sold and delivered to consumers?
Well, I needed to understand the science because I'm not a scientist. The last science class I took was in high school. So
the last math class I took at Princeton was the magic of numbers. I tell everybody that I'm not a math person. I am not a scientist either.
Exactly. So I needed to learn the science. I needed to understand the consumer. I mean, I know Black people, and I had marketed to Black people in corporately, you know, at Colgate, Palmolive, but I really needed to understand whether the Black community wanted this, how they would react to the information. And so we talked about that a lot. We talked to other people. And then, you know, we didn't really follow, like, I'm not the best, even though I said it's important. Business school added value and corporate America added value. I didn't necessarily follow all the traditional steps. Like, I didn't write a business plan. I just kind of jumped in, and we had to create the packaging, and we had to create the process. And then we had to create a website for people to be able to reach us. So those were the technical things that we had to do in order to be able to bring the product to the community.
And then from the scientific standpoint, like, what were the things on the back end that had to be done? Because I'm thinking, like, did you guys have like a lab where people were processing people's swabs and that stuff? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, and that was fairly easy because Dr. Kittles did that anyway.
Okay.
I mean, that was his bailiwick. So that was easy. The part that needed some massaging was once we identified the lab, you know, working through a process with them, working through pricing with them and things like that.
Do you remember your first successful, I guess, match? And what that felt like, or when you were able to identify where this customer or this person's ancestry was in Africa?
Well, I remember our first customer.
Okay.
Our first customer was C. Anita Bird. And you would be too young to remember, and I shouldn't talk because I can't remember the product now, but 15 years ago, there was a commercial when websites were really just getting up and running and e-commerce was very new. And there was a commercial about a company that the people were sitting around the computer waiting for the first order, and they were on pins and needles. And then the orders just kept coming and coming and coming. So we had a local news station, Channel 9. They did a story. The reporter did a story with Dr. Kittles revealing his ancestry. And so we just kind of sat by the computer after that newscast to watch the orders come in. And so and it wasn't like that commercial. They didn't stream in and overload us. I don't want to give you the wrong idea, but that was how come I was able to remember Anita Bird. And we still acknowledge her today as our first customer. And she's very proud to tell people that she was our first customer. So it was a cool feeling.
Thinking back, though, what were some of the big challenges that you guys faced in getting everything up and running beyond the initial hump? You have your initial hump, but then as you guys were scaling, what were some of the things that were coming your way?
Well, it really was the criticism that we got in the media and from other scientists. That was very difficult. So we didn't have very many competitors at the time. When we entered the market, there were only like 2 other companies that were doing genetic ancestry tracing, period. And they couldn't give Black people any information except for that they were African.
And we all know that, right?
Right. So, but then there were researchers who were also doing similar research who either wanted Dr. Kittles to collaborate with them or were trying to do it on their own. And so between them And then the white scientists from the other companies bad-mouthing us, saying that it wasn't possible to do what we do. That was difficult. That was a hurdle that we had to follow that we had to deal with because it kept coming up. When you did research for this. And so I'm sure you saw people who speak, who are hating on us, basically saying it's not possible. Some of those people are the same. They're trying to do it themselves. They don't say that. You know what I mean? So that was difficult. And that takes a toll when you're constantly being criticized, particularly by white folks. But then there are also Black folks who weren't necessarily, they didn't believe it was even possible. Like it couldn't even fit within their idea of what is possible. And we have all kinds of Black people in our community. So we have Black people who don't believe that they're from Africa.
Then Are you serious? There are people like that still exist?
I'm not African. Yeah, girl. Yeah.
Okay. I'm rolling my eyes at those people.
And then there are people who don't think it's important to know where you're from in Africa. And then there are the people that you would have to convince that it is possible and that they should use us. So, you've got this whole spectrum of potential consumers that makes it hard. And then the other thing that was difficult was that we started this company without any funding. We self-funded our launch.
$1,200, right?
Yeah. And so we didn't have we couldn't buy advertising. So what we did invest in was a PR person who I happened to go to high school with and I ran into on the subway in New York when we were in our planning stages. And he was doing PR for a textbook company and his product was science textbooks.
What? It's funny how things work out, right? It's so funny.
That was the hard part, trying to get media coverage, enough media coverage to really make a dent. But we did it.
Because I'm thinking if you guys were like the first to market, especially within this segment, you would think that people would be on it. But in 2003, what was the climate for these type of stories? Because I feel like now this is all the rage, right? Everybody wants to know where they came from. But how did you guys then navigate past those challenges and position yourselves for success?
Tenacity. I mean, there were enough people that did want to know to keep us going. That's how we did it. We just put our noses down and we just grinded it out. As we were able to invest more in our marketing message, we traveled everywhere we could to present to organizations. I think that we've probably done more to increase the genetic literacy of the Black community than any other organization, because between the two of us, we've traveled everywhere, just talking to groups and breaking it down. And when you break it down for people and you talk to them about the historical context of this work, you demystify the science, and then you discuss the cultural impact, they get it. But it takes 30, 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And there are only two of us there were only two of us to spread that message. So
thinking about the timeline, you launched in 2003. When, in your eyes, did you guys start to see traction and success, like that was running on its own and not like, what am I trying to say? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, how long did it take for you to really get the ball rolling on its own? I'm thinking of like, how you're pushing a ball up a hill and you need a lot of people. When did the ball start to roll?
Girl, we still need a lot of people to talk about. It's all the rage now, but people still don't know who we are necessarily because we don't advertise on television like the other companies in the marketplace. So it's still a grind and it's still a hustle. But what I'll say is by 2004, we were able to take a salary.
Okay.
But we've always run this company very lean. So whenever we had profits, we reinvested them back into the company. And that has been what has kept us going. I would say our biggest year was we peaked in 2007, right before the recession. That was thanks to, we did a big, huge partnership with the National Black Arts Festival in Atlanta. we were down there for the two full weeks of that festival. And I feel like I must have gone around Atlanta. I traveled everywhere. Felt like every show, every gallery, every place that we could possibly integrate into that festival we did. And it paid off for us. And then after the recession, of course, we were able to maintain our business at a time when, certainly finding out where you're from in Africa can be seen as a luxury by many and not as a necessity. So we've been grinding for a very long time.
What was motivating you? Because I feel like, when you talk to founders, there's always that thing that is their why. What was your why?
I think it was that if we didn't do it, if African ancestry went away, then no one else would ever know where they were from in Africa.
And that's so important because I was thinking about, right? I feel like it's something like I just had this as I was preparing for this, I realized that my scope of where I come from is so limited. Like I only know, maybe it's just like my particular family, but I only know like my great grandmother. I don't know anyone beyond my great grandmother, right? And her family or who came. Like there was no passed down stories of where our families are from. And you just think about like there are some people who can trace their families back hundreds of years. So like what were you teaching people about why it's so important for us to know where we're coming from?
There's a few things. So psychologically, knowing where you're from is a critical component of knowing who you are. And we're the only group in the country, when we talk about the U.S., that doesn't know where we're from. I mean, practically every Black person has had an experience either at work or at school or socially where the people around them talk about where they're from. Italy, Russia, Mexico, whatever it is. And we're just left like, la-da-da-da-da, I'm from North Carolina, or, I know I'm from Africa, but I don't know where. Not having a foundation. I mean, there's that Marcus Garvey quote that's still relevant, of people without knowledge of their past history and culture is like a tree without root. The trick is that we've been so disconnected that we don't even realize necessarily that there's a void. We don't even realize how important it is because we just never envisioned that we'd ever know. And so it presents a marketing challenge because I've heard people say time and time again, you don't understand how important it is often until you get the results.
I'm so excited. Like, it's like...
You got it. I mean, you get it up front. The other thing is that as Black people in the diaspora, we're the original victims of identity theft. So think about what makes up your identity: your name, your family, the language you speak, your spiritual practices. But if you don't know your name, which we don't, your ancestors' last name, African ancestors, probably was not Campbell.
I'm 100% positive.
I'm going to go out on a limb.
I think so too, Gina. I think so.
You just said you don't know your family past your great grandmother. I'm going to go out on a limb and say your ancestors didn't speak English. So you're not speaking your language, and your ancestors here were forced to speak English at some point, which wasn't their indigenous language. So ever since we got here, we've been disconnected, and we continue to pass this disconnection on. And people like Dr. Joy DeGruy and others will tell you that there's post-traumatic stress around that. But we're almost like we're the walking clueless because we don't even understand the impact of not knowing who we are.
And it's just, it's funny. I forgot where I was reading it, but Zora Neale Hurston. Did you see that? I think they were releasing her manuscript that she like an interview she had with one of the last living slaves.
I just saw that this weekend.
Yeah, I was reading that a few weeks ago, and just to hear him recount his story or to read it was just like, wow, I could not imagine being brought over on a slave ship, right? And then having everything like be stripped away from you, right? And having to like come to a country and learn a whole new language and just being torn away from your people. Like, it's something that we can't wrap our minds around. It's just so, that's all I could say. It's just, right?
Right.
It's one of those things. And, it's just making me think like we're so blessed. I feel like at some points, like I couldn't imagine ever having to live during those time periods, but, let's get to the results.
You ready? You ready to get reconnected?
Yes. No, because, and I don't know if it's different because like my parents were from Jamaica. So I know at least we landed in Jamaica, but I don't know anything before that, right? So I am so excited to hear because I feel like now I don't know. We'll get to it. All right. So however you want to reveal the results, I'm putting it in your hands now, Gina.
Okay.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how the science behind this works and all that.
That's what I'll do. So we offer 2 tests. One test traces maternal ancestry, mother to mother to mother to mother. The other test traces paternal ancestry, father to father to father to father. So we look at individual branches of the family tree. We don't look at your entire family tree and break down your some percentage from this continent and some percentage from that continent. Those kinds of tests that you see advertised on television are extremely broad. And we'll get into the differences later. But what we are is extremely specific. So instead of just like when you go to a family reunion, you don't celebrate every branch of the tree at the reunion. You celebrate one branch. Everybody comes from your grandmother, maybe 2 branches. They come from your grandmother and your grandfather. Mm-hmm. And those are the descendants that are at the reunion. So we looked at your mother's ancestry. And we were able to do that because there's a little bit of DNA that you inherited from your mother that didn't mix with anything you got from your father. Okay. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have 2 sisters.
Okay. So you and your sisters got this same DNA from your mother, even though you look different, you act differently, everything about you could be different. But there's some DNA that you all 3 got from your mother that is unique to your mother and her sisters and brothers because they got it unchanged from your grandmother. And she and her brothers and sisters got it from your great-grandmother. And she got it from her mother and her mother and her mother. Mm-hmm. It's called mitochondrial DNA. And it doesn't change significantly over generations. So if I can take your mitochondrial DNA and compare it to mitochondrial DNA from all over the world, and I find a match, then I found someone with whom you have to share a maternal ancestry because the only way that person got it was from their mother and her mother and her mother. So if you think about it, my maternal ancestry is found among the Fulani people living in Nigeria today. Mm-hmm. That means that there are people in Nigeria today who have the very same mitochondrial DNA as I do, on a certain portion of the DNA. I live in DC. Somebody else lives in northern Nigeria, perhaps. We each got that same identical DNA from our mother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother. Ultimately, we came from one woman. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And how did you build the database? Like how did you find the different matches in order to compare the swabs that people are submitting?
Right. So that's the benefit and the beauty of African Ancestry. We have the largest database of Indigenous African lineages in the world. We have over 33,000.
Wow.
Ancestry.com that you see advertised on TV, they have 464. We have 33,000.
So is mine now added to that database?
No. This is of Indigenous African.
Oh, okay.
23andMe, another company you see advertised, they have 621 African lineages. We have 33,000. So that's why they give you percentages, broad strokes, and we give you specifics. So, and that database that we have was Dr. Kittles compiled that database in conjunction with researchers, anthropologists, historians on the continent to make sure that we had the populations that were a part of the transatlantic slave trade.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Like, meaning like just thinking about how broad and how much this can help, especially people in the United States who want to know their history and where they're from. Oh, okay.
And so you did the swabbing, you sent us back the swabs. The swabs didn't have any of your personal information on the envelopes, and that's what we sent to the lab. So the people who handled your genetic information had no idea who you were.
Okay.
The people in our office who knew your name and address so we could send you the results, they don't handle your genetic information. Everything is confidential, and then the lab destroys that DNA once a result is found. Okay.
And how long does that process take?
The entire process, on average, is about 8 weeks.
Okay.
It can take longer depending on our volume, or it could take, we could get results as quickly as 4 weeks. So we can't guarantee a time, but the average amount of time is roughly 8 weeks.
All right.
So for you, Raina, we found, and that's the other thing I'll say, we don't always find African results.
Okay.
Just because you're Black doesn't mean that the branch of the tree that you test with us is going to come back African. We can't guarantee that.
Okay.
Because as Black people, as descendants of the slave trade, most of us have some European ancestry on some branch here or there.
Yeah,
right?
I was just telling you before the call how, like, my dad is redhead with green eyes, right? So It's like, where did that come from?
And you can look like your dad and be redhead with green eyes, or you can look like Wesley Snipes and still have European ancestry. So when we trace the maternal line, and that's the only line that women can trace, we find African results 92% of the time.
Okay.
6% of the time it comes back European. 2% of the time it comes back Native American or something else. In your case, it came back African, so this is good.
Yes.
We found your ancestry on the coast of West Africa. The country that you share ancestry with has both French and English as an official language.
Okay.
It's known by many as Africa in miniature because everything you can find across the continent, you can find in this country, ecologically, linguistically, culturally. It all resides within the present day borders of this country. And then the group that you share ancestry with is known as the artists and the artisans.
Well, maybe that's why I love the arts now.
Yeah, and so and they have a very interesting history that you can learn about. So, Raina, it's with great pleasure and pride that I tell you that you and your sisters, your mom, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your grandmom, and any kids that you guys have in the future, all your grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren will now know that you share ancestry maternally with the Tikar people living in Cameroon today.
Oh my God. After this call, I'm going to be on a Google fest. Just Google. How do you spell that? T-I-C-A-R?
T-I-K-A-R.
Okay.
And so you're going to get your results package in the mail. I will email you the letter for the sake of this interview. That is not something that we normally do. And then I want to encourage you to go on to the African Ancestry online community on Facebook. We have a private group. There are a lot of your Cameroonian cousins in that group, and they're sharing information and resources. There's a guide, a book that we used to publish, and send with the results. It's now a digital book. It's an ebook. You can download that from the group and learn more about the history and culture of the Tikar people and of Cameroon.
Thank you so much. I am so excited right now because, as you said, it's like you never know how important it is to know where you come from until you don't know. But now I know, and it's going to be so interesting to go back and to even just to tell my other family members, like, you guys, this is where we're from. We got to take a trip. We got to go find our family.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about being from Cameroon. That is a country that is easy to travel to.
Okay.
There are some countries that we find that, aren't safe to travel to right now or don't have a diplomatic presence in the United States. So that makes it a little more difficult. Mm-hmm. But Cameroon, we have a great relationship with the Embassy of Cameroon. We're working with them to have an African Ancestry family reunion in Cameroon next year. And so I think that you'll enjoy what you learn about the country and any experiences that you have. Now, where do you live? What part of the country do you live in?
I'm in New Jersey.
So yeah, and there's a large Cameroonian community in New York City.
I'm so excited. And what do you know if there are any, I know you guys have had lots of celebrities and other people who.
I need to tell you about your cousins.
Okay, tell me who my cousins are. I have to get them on the show.
Exactly. So I'm going to go for Cameroon in general because I would have to pull up their ethnic groups. But you have people like Taraji P. Henson.
She was on the show for 2 seconds. I interviewed her makeup artist, and then she came in on the end. So Taraji.
Yeah, she shares ancestry with the Massa people in Cameroon. You have Quincy Jones.
Okay.
I think that Quincy Jones is Bamaleke. Or he may be, he's Tikar. He's Tikar.
Oh, okay. So he's a direct cousin.
Let me look at
Well, those are good enough. Taraji and Quincy, I'm coming for you guys. We got to have dinner now and make some plans, all right?
Exactly. It's a great Don Cheadle, Shirley Ralph.
It's funny because these are all people who I'm not saying that there's any coincidence here, but it's funny because they're all artists in some way, right? Yeah. And they're all creatives and, that stuff like that gets passed on in your DNA. I
believe that wholeheartedly. Lamont Rucker, the actor Lamont Rucker, he's Tikar.
Oh, wow.
And he's gorgeous. You definitely want to.
Well, if he's my cousin, I don't know if that's going to work. I'm just playing.
Condoleezza Rice, we trace to the Tikar. Yeah, so there's a lot of Cameroonian. Roberta Flack, she's not Tikar, but she's Cameroonian. Layla Hathaway. Mm. Yeah, so you've got a tribe. You've definitely got a tribe.
Well, I'm so excited to just learn more. And now to know that at some point, one of my ancestors, where they came from. And if I wanted to know my dad's side, so how does that work with people? Would he have to take a test? And then that would be how he'd find out his ancestry?
Well, so men can do both. Okay. Women can only do the maternal line. Okay. Men can trace their own mother to mother to mother, and they can also trace the father to father to father. That test requires a Y chromosome. That's why we can't take it as women. We don't have Y chromosome. Okay. So if you wanted to know the Campbell male line, your dad could take a paternal test. And with the paternal test, we find that 35 to 40% of those results come back European. Not African.
Well, that makes sense with the history of slavery, right?
Exactly. It was white men who were having brown babies more than white women were having brown babies. Oftentimes, a man will trace his maternal ancestry to have a better chance of finding African results.
Okay. Well, I'll have to tell my dad about that. And I know you were saying that's even something, so I know with the price, maybe we can talk about just how it works. I know the pricing. So I think some people will say, one of my cousins was like, oh, African Ancestry is too much compared to the other ones. How do you navigate that conversation when that comes up to people?
Well, the first thing I say is, what is it you want to know? If you just want to know what % African you are, then the average Black person is 75% African, 25% European. That's not really telling you anything. So you're paying a lot less, but you're not getting anything you can use. And when you take the other test, you can only share those results possibly with your siblings. that you shared both parents, but the results aren't the same for your mother or your children or anybody else on that branch of the tree, because it's not looking at your maternal line. Those tests are looking at you across your entire genetic family tree. So when you think about the number of people, you get what you pay for, basically. Mm-hmm. If you just want some generic information, then spend your $99 on some generic information, you know. But if you want some specific information that can transform the way you view yourself and the way you view Africa, then you're going to pay more. And so, but your test, you have two sisters. How many siblings does your mom have?
Oh, I can't embarrass my mom now. See, my grandpa was a bad man, Gina. So my grandmother only has one child. That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay, so then these results that you got are the same for 4 people in your immediate family.
Yeah, but my grandmother, her siblings, they all have the same mother and father. So like all my cousins from that end, I think she has like 9 siblings, my grandmother. So then
there you go.
Yeah.
So now we just increased let's just say there are 20 people that share those results. Each person could contribute $10, $15, and you have a test. So this is a gift that you can share with your entire lineage. It's all about what it's worth to you. That's the other thing I talk to people about. You know, we spend, our test today costs $299. People spend more than that on Beyonce tickets.
Yep. Sneakers, shoes,
bags. People spend more than that on their phones. So it's all about what you think is valuable.
Yeah.
And so everything's not for everybody. So your cousins who said, "Oh, it costs too much," it's not important to them, and that's okay.
You know, it's funny. So I just texted my sister. I said, we are from the T-Car people in Cameroon, right? And the first thing she said, and this just goes to show how not everyone understands how these tests work. She said, "What percentage?" Right? She didn't understand what this means. So now this is a learning opportunity for me to teach her a little bit about how the test works, because I feel like a lot of us don't even know that we're not getting the quality results when we're going to these other types of, when we're doing these other types of tests.
Yeah. And that's one thing that's very frustrating to me, just personally, with the other companies, is that they've now, because they can advertise, they've defined a narrative for us. Mm-hmm. They've defined a narrative that how much African ancestry you have is important. People can now say, "Oh, well, I'm 80% African," or "I'm 75% African," as if it makes a difference, or you're more African than someone who's 60% or 42%. You know what I mean? That is a narrative that I think is dangerous, because it doesn't matter how much African ancestry you have. You're still a person of African descent. And when you're trying to think about what was stolen from you, finding out that you're some percentage African doesn't give you anything back. So
I was just going to say that it doesn't fill the hole, right? It doesn't, you still have a hole. It's like, all right, so now what?
And for your listeners who have maybe taken the other company's test or are considering it, read the fine print. We're the only company whose lab destroys your DNA, and we have 40 countries represented in our database of 33,000 lineages. The other companies give you, they break down your percentage African into some percentage from this region, some percentage from that region. They've divided the continent of Africa into 9 regions. 5 of those regions are in West and Central Africa. And if you just parse the regions out, there's 7 countries represented in their 5 regions. There are 21 countries, present day countries, in West and Central Africa. So what are they telling you? Based on 464 people on the whole continent of Africa, we say everybody gets all the regions, because you said you weren't into math, and I'm not trying to make it too specific, but when you only have 500 samples, everybody's going to fit in to all the groups. Because it's just not a big enough sample size to compare anything to.
And you know what is also very interesting, and it goes off of what you said earlier, is we've now been okay with that being all we know.
Right.
Because before, if I never had this conversation with you, right, and I never heard about African ancestry and I went on and took the other tests, I would have probably been just as excited, but not knowing that I'm still missing the key thing, right? And that is very dangerous, because not even dangerous. It's just like, wow, you don't even know that.
It's disappointing.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the other thing that I've learned. That's another lesson that has come out of African ancestry, this African ancestry experience from a business perspective. Because I know that you have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs that are listening. And that is, consumers aren't discerning. Right. So I'm just going to put your cousin on blast again. The one who said it costs more than the other companies. But she or he didn't take the time to see why, to see how they're different. We just and I'm saying I'm part of that. We just buy on price. Or we saw a commercial that said, we'll give you this information. No one stops to think, oh, well, are there other companies that do this? Is this the best company to do that? What do I really want to know when I'm taking this test? Asking critical questions to make sure that as a consumer, we spend our money to get what it is we really want. So I want to encourage your listeners who as entrepreneurs, to make sure that they communicate clearly with their consumers so that they understand what they're getting. And then as consumers, to be a little more discerning in your purchase decisions, because we get calls every week. We probably get a call a day at least from people who've taken other tests and are disappointed. The reason they took the other test is because they hadn't heard about us. And that's fair. We don't advertise. We're not everywhere, but we can't. Right?
Yeah.
But you also have this thing that's glued to your hand, most likely, this phone, that all you had to do was type in African ancestry or ancestry for African people or ancestry for Black people, and we would have come up.
You know, it's something that I was listening to, like a podcast on sales, right? And they were talking about how the best salespeople are ones who won't sell you something you don't need, right? And it's funny because I'm not trying to blast these other companies, right? But they won't tell you that if you want the best results, these tests may not be for you. You know what I mean?
They'll tell you that when you call and complain, then they'll tell you. But you know what? Let me, because I'm not a blaster either. Mm-hmm. Let me just say this. Every company offers something different. So if you want to know what your health traits are and your genetic traits, there's a company for that. If you want to know who else in the world you're related to and you want to be able to connect with those people, if they exist in the database, there's a company for that. And if you want to know the present day country in Africa and the ethnic group that you share ancestry with, then there's a company for that. So each company drives in its own lane and has its own set of strengths. Ours happens to be African result.
And that's a good lesson too for all the entrepreneurs listening in, is really know your niche and define what you want your niche to be, and then hone in and find the people who need what you're able to give them. But Gina, as we wind down, I want to just ask you this question. You know, I know that you mentioned earlier that, you know, you guys aren't advertising in the ways that these other companies who may have like a lot more funding, maybe advertising, and they have all these venture capital behind them, whatever. What are the ways that listeners who are listening in or people who have taken African ancestry, how can we help you guys spread the word about the great work that you're doing?
Thank you. Well, one of the things people do a lot is they watch videos. And so if you've had a positive experience with African ancestry, people are making videos opening their results. They're making videos when they travel to the country or whatever it is. So you could talk about us through a video. We're on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. So that's very helpful. If you would, talk about us there. And then we have a mailing list, and we don't spam. We don't send a whole lot of emails, but what we do is we send deals, promotional offers occasionally. And then when we're going to be in your city, we let you know. And so there's an opportunity for you to come out and learn, and then you're prepared to share with other people. So I would say join our email list as well. That's another way that you can help us spread the word. When we send out information, then you can share it with your networks.
And, a question I have just about the current day-to-day, like, what are you guys doing now to evolve with just how consumers are getting information and how people are taking in this stuff? Like, is there something that African Ancestry is working on next? Or you guys still, is there something, like, what's next for African Ancestry? That's the question.
Right. So one of the things that we're moving towards is having digital delivery of our results. So we're the only company that sends you hard copies. And we do that strategically because when we started this industry 15 years ago, the digital divide was real. Mm-hmm. And people were not as comfortable with going online to get information like this. Now, 15 years later, people are more comfortable with that. So we're moving into that. So whereas you're going to get a hard copy of your results printed out that you can put with your family materials, you will soon be able to go online and download your information or, look at it online. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, as the other companies have opened up awareness of genetic ancestry tracing, there's a real opportunity for us to help Black people learn more about who they are through their DNA. So not just with ancestry, but learning about health, learning about wellness through their DNA. And so that's on the horizon for us.
Ooh, I'm really interested in that because I feel like that's something that I always wonder about, like what parts of our DNA contribute to who we are and how we experience the world as we experience it now. So I'm definitely on the lookout for that. Through the past 15 years of doing African Ancestry, I know this is a partnership that you are doing in partnership with Dr. Kittles. What has been the biggest business lesson for you personally that you've learned about what it takes to run a successful company?
It takes an accountant.
Mm-hmm. A good one, right?
Yeah, it takes an accountant. That I tell everybody, that's the first thing you should invest in. It takes resilience and tenacity because there's so much competition out there. There's hardly anything new. And so you really have to craft what you offer, like you said earlier, really understand your niche and then work your niche and don't give up. I'm telling you, there have been some days when I was like, okay, at first I used to worry that no one would be able to find out where they're from. And then there were days when I was like, you know what? Too bad. I've done my part. I've had enough. And then Chadwick Boseman mentions us on the Breakfast Club and we get an influx of orders. So you just never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So you can't give up unless you really, truly have just hit the end. And then the last thing is having a support network. You can't do this by yourself. Mm-hmm. Even if you are a solopreneur, you need people around you that you can go to for advice, or people around you who you can go to just chill out, or people that you can go to to commiserate, fellow business owners. You have to have a support network or you will drive yourself bananas.
That is so true. So true. Gina, thank you so much for doing this interview. Let's go to our lightning round. Okay. So this part of the interview, I'm going to give you a prompt and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And we're going to be sticking with our whole dream driving metaphor. So you're going to hear the gear shifts in the car. So think about those gear shifts, think about dream driving, and that should help you come up with your one word. Okay. Mm-hmm. The first word is park.
Stillness.
Reverse.
Change your perspective.
Neutral.
Patience. Stay the course.
And then last but not least, drive.
3 words. Go for it. Go for it.
That's the best thing, right? Because at the end of the day, you may not know what's coming, but you got to just keep going. And it's funny because, like, let's say you gave up, right? And then you guys said, we're closing down African Ancestry. And then Chadwick did the interview the next day, and there was no African Ancestry for me to go look for, This interview would never have happened. So it's like, you really have to keep going because you never know where your blessings will come from.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And then last but not least, our keys to success. If you want to be a dream driver, you need to have those keys to success. So what are 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road?
I think the things I just said. I think you need to have resilience and tenacity. Mm-hmm. This is not for the faint of heart. Pursuing your dreams is not for the faint of heart. You need a support network. You cannot achieve your dreams by yourself. Mm-hmm. And then from a business perspective, focus on finances. You got to set things up right from the beginning, and an accountant is the most important person to help you do that.
Did you have any resources that you, Dr. Kittles, really used that help you guys as you were laying the foundation for African Ancestry?
Girl, I told you we went by the seat of our pants. No, I don't actually. I had a huge network. So I had graphic designers on my team. In my network. I had accountants in our network. I had product developers in our network. I had website designers in my network. So I really leaned on my network. I did not lean on outside resources. I went within, and I leaned on the people that I knew.
And that's important. I think I was listening to Issa Rae quote where she was talking about how the people who were hustling with her, right, that were on that same level with her were the ones that she really relied on as she was growing Awkward Black Girl. And now look where she is. And she's able to bring those people with her. So instead of trying to find the best out there, sometimes you have to look to your side and say, like, who's here that can help me right now? And I'm with you in that one. Well, thank you so much, Gina. Can you tell our dream drivers where they can, find African Ancestry online? If they want to order a kit, want to find you guys on social, let us know where.
Yep. So we're online at AfricanAncestry.com. And we're on Facebook as AfricanAncestry.com. We're on Twitter and IG as African Ancestry. So again, just check us out. Please join our mailing list, because then you can keep up with what we're doing, specials, and when we're traveling around.
Thank you, Gina. This has been amazing. And I'm about to go on Google and Google the T-card people of Cameroon.
I know that's right. Well, good. Have a good time learning about your people.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's a wrap for episode 160 with Dr. Gina Paige. I hope you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. And if you want to get your own African Ancestry kit, you can use the code DREAMS at checkout to get 5% off your order. That's the code DREAMS, all right? And everything's listed in our show notes at dreamsanddrive.com. Just click on episode 160. If you love this episode, then please make sure you're sharing it on social. Screenshot wherever you're listening and share it on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find us at Dreams and Drive across all those platforms. And please use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. Wherever you're listening, make sure you are subscribed. So if this is your first time listening, you have to subscribe so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. I really, really love it as well when you guys are leaving reviews, especially if you're an Apple Podcast. And we did have 2 new reviews this week that I want to read for you guys. All right, so this review is coming from the Evolving Chair podcast. Raina is a great storyteller. I love her passion to help individuals push past their fear to put their dreams in drive. Keep up the great work. Lakeisha, host of the Evolving Chair podcast. Thank you so much, Lakeisha. This one is coming from Reaching for Success. And she says, love Dreams and Drive. What I love most about the podcast is that it confirms that I'm going in the right direction in the area of entrepreneurship. As a creative and entrepreneur, it's always great to hear from people who think like me and are going against the grain to make their dreams a reality. Thank you for creating an amazing platform. Well, thank you so much, Reaching for Success, for listening. I really do appreciate it. And if anyone else wants to leave a review, leave an honest rating. I would love it as well. These reviews help other people learn about the show, and it also helps me learn what you guys are liking and what kind of impact the show is having on you as an individual. Just a few more house notes. Remember that you can find us on our Facebook group. Just search Dream Driver Mastermind the next time you're logged on, or go to dreamsanddrive.com/Facebook. And if you want to sign up to get our online newsletter, The Keys, that goes out every week, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. And last thing, remember, all the merchandise in our Dreams and Drive shop is now on sale. So if you want to get a t-shirt, hoodie, or sweatshirt, now is the time. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop. That's dreamsanddrive.com/shop. And if you want to sponsor an episode, so I'm looking to book out episodes for the rest of the summer and the early fall. So if you're interested in sponsoring an episode or doing an episode giveaway, you can email me directly at Raina@dreamsanddrive.com. That's Raina@dreamsanddrive.com. All right, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 161. Bye, guys.